Recording in progress.
Hopefully not.
Commissioner? Commissioner? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Monday, January 8th, West Fargo First City Commission meeting for 2024. We call the meeting to order. I'd ask that everyone in the room please silence their cell phones so we're not interrupted during the meeting. And I would ask you to note that Commissioner Simmons is joining us this evening by Zoom. With that, please join me in a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner George?
Here.
Commissioner Simmons?
Aye.
Commissioner Doris?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here. All commissioners are present. First, next order of business is to approve the order of the agenda. It has been distributed and it was in your packets, commissioners.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next order of business is to approve the minutes of December 18th, 2023. They have been distributed and they were in your packet.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds it. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of December 18th. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item F is the building permits. It has been distributed and was in your packets.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the building permits as distributed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Next order of business is the consent agenda. We have items A through E. Items were in your packet and have been distributed.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as distributed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on, we are now on the regular agenda. The first order of business is public comment. Madam Secretary?
I just had one, and it was David Wick.
All right. Mr. Withy, please step to the lectern. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. I'm David Withy, and I live at 2421 McLeod Drive East. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. Last week, I sent you a paper representing West Fargo TAP regarding the proposed sanitation rate increases. Since then, Public Works Manager Anvik invited a couple of us in to discuss this topic. We were pleasantly surprised that Mayor Dardis also joined the discussion. This was very beneficial in helping us better understand more of the situation with the sanitation division. We're still discussing our views based upon this additional information, and we will be issuing a new position paper this week. I cannot fully explain how nice it is for citizens to be able to be given enough time to get involved in the discussion of topics affecting taxes, fees, and services. I also need to give credit where credit is due. I am impressed with the example City Administrator Scott is providing for the rest of the city staff, especially the directors. During these challenging times for taxpayers, it is appreciated that Mr. Scott has not asked to fill his former position as Assistant City Administrator. What a great message that sometimes the solution to a challenge is not to add staff, but to find ways to be more productive or to even cut some workday expenses or activities. Mr. Scott, taxpayers appreciate your leading by example. It is a challenge being an elected official, expected to quickly know something about everything, to make decisions with everyone looking over your shoulder. Commissioners, thank you for all you do and for the time you spend for all of us.
Thank you, sir. We only had one individual who's registered for public comment. We now close the public comment and we move on to the regular agenda, item number 2. Item number 2 is A23-30, Tintus Land Company, 15th edition, approval of a conditional use permit for wireless telecommunications tower. Aaron Nelson, our planning director for the city of West Fargo, will be presenting. Good evening, Mr. Nelson.
Good evening, Commission President and Commissioners. So item number 2, Tintus Land Company 15th edition is a request for a conditional use permit for a wireless telecommunications tower. Excuse me. The subject property is located at 1402 and 1420 16th Street East in West Fargo. I'll pull up a aerial photo here. This is the site of the Lutheran Church of the Cross, located just west, or on the west side of the old Gordman's building, if you're familiar with that area there. The red box shown on the aerial image here is the approximate location of the proposed tower on the east side of the site, east side of the parking lot there. The applicant is Buell Consulting, working on behalf of Verizon Wireless. And the overall purpose of this application, again, is to allow a wireless telecommunications tower to be constructed specifically with, at the site of an existing church within a residential zoning district. The zoning code allows wireless telecommunications towers at church sites within residential districts when camouflaged as architectural structures associated with the church, subject to review and approval by a conditional use permit process. Included in your meeting packet tonight are a number of attachments and renderings from the applicant. I'll just zoom into one here really quickly, showing the plan view of the rendering of what the proposed tower looks like in this situation. The proposed tower would be a monopole design with the equipment, telecommunications equipment hidden inside of the pole itself. And then on top of the pole would be a cross structure that would be similar to the existing cross structures associated with the existing church. The overall height of the tower itself would be 87.6 feet above ground level, and it would be adequately set back from all adjacent property lines to meet all applicable code requirements. There are a few other graphics and illustrations within the packet that I could pull up if there are any specific questions. This item did go to the Planning and Zoning Commission at their last meeting on December 12th and was recommended for approval by the City Commission here today. We did receive one phone call regarding this matter and one email in opposition to the proposed conditional use permit. The phone call was really just looking for more information and had some concerns unrelated to the conditional use permit itself. However, the resident that sent the email did have concerns with the conditional use permit for the tower. That email correspondence is included in your packet for reference. Ultimately, staff has reviewed the application and finds that it meets all applicable requirements as outlined in the zoning code. Again, this was recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the recommended action here tonight is to approve the conditional use permit as well as the associated conditional use permit agreement that is also included in your meeting packet. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have for staff.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Commissioners, questions of the gentleman? Okay. This is an actionable item. Looking for,
Move to approve.
thank you. I have a motion to move to approve the conditional use permit for a wireless telecommunication tower at 15th edition. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a second?
Mark just,
Simmons is.
yep, seconded. Commissioner Simmons just seconded.
Commissioner Simmons, please speak a little louder. I have a second. I have a motion and a second to approve the conditional use permit. Excuse me. Is there any further discussion? Pardon me. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Item number 3 is A23-4, Sand Hills 6th Edition. Approval of the second reading of rezoning ordinance and final plot. Mr. Nelson.
Okay, thank you. So Sand Hill 6th Edition, this again is a request for approval of the second reading of the rezone ordinance and the final plat approval. This item was presented in more detail at your last regular meeting, second meeting in December. Nothing has changed from what was presented at that meeting. And so the, again, requested action tonight is to approve the second reading of the rezone ordinance and the final plat approval. I would note, however, that we are doing something a little bit unique with the purchase of pond lots within the subdivision. We do have, we will be going through and closing on that property with the developer in order to facilitate the city's purchase of the pond lots for regional stormwater infrastructure. And so we do, included in the meeting packet is a purchase agreement associated with those pond lots. And so part of the request tonight is to approve the purchase of those pond lots in conjunction with the approval of the plat, and then to authorize the city's signatures on the appropriate paperwork for that closing. Also associated with the The plat approval would be all the typical subdivision agreements and public dedication agreements that are also included in your meeting packet. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioner Olson?
Within the blue lines there, is the parcel that the city is in the process of purchasing for a possible interchange, is that included in there? Is that part of the plat, or is that left out?
Correct. It is part of the plat, yep. So it'd be Lot 5, Block 3, on the subdivision plat, which would be the southeast corner of the plat. That is the tract of land that the city recently acquired for interstate right-of-way preservation purposes. Yep.
Thank you.
Additional questions?
Move to
I'll make a
approve
motion
second
to
reading.
approve.
Oh, let Simmons do it.
Commissioner Simmons moves to approve the second reading, and second by Commissioner Olson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Item number 4 is A23-17, the Sand Hills 7th Edition, approval of the second reading of rezoning ordinance and final plat. Again, we call on Mr. Nelson, Planning Director for the City of West Fargo.
Thank you. And just like the last item, Sand Hill 7th Edition is the approval of the second reading of the rezone ordinance and approval of the final plat. This is the 7th edition, located just kind of to the north and west of the 6th edition, which was just approved. Again, this item was presented in detail at your last regular meeting, so I'll spare you some of the details unless there are specific questions. The action requested from the commission tonight is to, again, approve the second reading of the rezone ordinance and final plat approval for Sand Hill 7th edition, including the associated agreements, which is the subdivision improvement agreement and the dedication agreement. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have for staff.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Commissioners, questions for the gentleman?
I'll move to approve.
Commissioner Olson moves to approve the second reading of rezoning ordinance of A23-17 Sand Hills 7th Edition. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Is there any further discussion on A23-17 Sand Hills 7th Edition? Approval of the second reading. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is a federal grant program procurement policy. We call on our finance director, Heidi. Heidi?
Good afternoon, Commission President Dardis and Commissioners. You will see that there's a federal grant program procurement policy. That's kind of a tongue twister. This is basically needed. Any federal financial assistance we receive must follow the uniform guidance, and we need to have procurement standards for this. So Eide Bailey has recommended this in our 2021 audit that management needs to establish a written policy that is in compliance with all of these sections. So attached is the federal procurement policy that is in regard to this. Now, you had passed a procurement policy back in May of 2023, so that kind of outlines the thresholds and policies for the procurement, but we also need a policy specific to the federal requirements, so that is what this document was. John Shockley has prepared this policy, and this will go into effect upon your approval. So it's basically needed for us to receive federal funds, and that's any funds directly from the federal government or pass-through funds. For example, Department of Transportation receives money from the federal government, and then we get the payment from the state Department of Transportation. So this is a requirement of those federal funds that we're receiving. So I'd ask for a motion or any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the federal grant program procurement policy as brought forth by Heidi this evening, our finance director. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 6 is a request to expend from the 1.5% public safety sales tax. It's an item being brought forward by our Chief of Police, Chief Nielsen, and he's looking to approve an expenditure of $95,000 in public safety sales tax funds. Chief, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Commission President and fellow commissioners. In your packets tonight, you'll have some information regarding the request to spend the $95,000. The West Fargo Police Department is looking to advance its training with this the addition of a virtual reality training system. This training system is, to simply put, it's a device that's put over top of the officer's face, and it allows the officer to conduct some real-world training that's similar to real world, but it's essentially inside of the headgear. This training includes pre-made scripted active shooter scenarios, and the West Fargo Police Department can confidently report that doing so would allow our officers to have outreach on the active shooter training program. These VR system would be new software that comes that would also be provided new software that comes with the goggles that goes onto or into the system, which is run by a Dell laptop. All West Fargo officers are currently going through some CIT training right now, and that CIT training is crisis intervention, and that's a 40-hour training for mental health. This would assure that the officers that are utilizing this training would continue to be provided real-world live scenarios developed by mental health professionals. Also within this system, this would push our department to be the first department in the state of North Dakota to have this training device, and it would also allow the officers to go through scenarios that are utilized in de-escalation. As we know that today's day and age, the mental health crisis around the world, I believe this training device would help the officers with making sure that they're utilizing their words and they're utilizing some de-escalation, and it allows them these scenarios that if there is a need to increase use of force, they're able to do that within the screen, and they're able to be corrected after they're done talking and after they're done with the scenario. These are scenarios that are very hard to replicate when it comes to providing officers to role play or bringing in other individuals to act as actors. This allows us the ability to continue to train our officers, like I said, with a lot of de-escalation devices. So with that, the police department has not spent any money out of the fund, and at this time we're asking to spend the $95,000 for this training device, and I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Questions, anyone? Prior to the meeting, I did check on this, and we have in that fund for police and fire, we have $2,122,889 in there, so this is certainly affordable. For the public's information, the reason that this type of expenditure is coming forward, when there was a discussion going on about the public safety sales tax, we assured the public that we would be as transparent as we possibly could, that when we were going to expend those sales tax dollars that we collect, that they would be aware of the type of purchases that were being made. And so, again, the dollars that are collected are kept in a separate review, and so we know exactly how much is in there, and we know exactly how much our public safety people will be requesting, and the public will be brought into that and be informed of it. So with that, Commissioners, your pleasure.
Mayor Darters?
Yes, Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. I hope everyone can hear me. I just want to make the comment that Chief Nielsen did mention, I don't believe, is that this also will generate revenue because we'll be training other officers and other people. But more importantly, fellow commissioners, if this can save one of our officers' lives or civilian life, what is that worth? So I'm definitely for this. I think it's a great tool. Just one of many tools. Hopefully we'll be adding to the police department's toolbox. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and I'd remind the public that Commissioner Simmons holds the fire department and the police department portfolio, so there would be the opportunity for potential of training other officers, whether it's Cass County Sheriff's Department or neighboring departments, Chief?
Yes, sir. We'd bring that up as, if we were approved, we would bring that, to you and try to determine what would be the appropriate price for that. We also believe that with us hosting the Lake Region State College, the Peace Officer Academy here, that tends to be a $6,000 tuition, and possibly we'd be able to work out and negotiate if we're going to be implementing some of our CSOs into that program, maybe work out a program with them where they could, discount the tuition or take off the tuition if they're going to utilize it as well. So we would utilize it as some revenue-based as well.
Great. Excellent, thank you. Anyone else?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Simmons moves to approve the expenditure of $95,000 in public safety sales tax funds. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Item number 7 is a presentation of the sanitation rate change option. This is informational only. This is not going to be a decision that we vote on this evening. We're going to call on Mr. Matt Anvik, our Public Works Director, City of West Fargo. Good evening, Mr. Anvik, and welcome.
Good evening, Commissioner President, Commissioners. At the December 18th meeting, I brought before you 3 options for your, to vote on which option you thought would be best. At that meeting, it was tabled. I had a little bit more direction to just come back with 1 or 2 options for the January 22nd meeting and meet with Commissioner George on what we could do with some of those options coming up. We did meet with Commissioner George last week and had we had 1 option that we brought forward. And then Commissioner George had mentioned she'd been getting some feedback from the public about wanting a second option where there wasn't a charge for the bulky option or bulky rates items that we are now looking to charge for. So in front of you today was 2 rate changes, rate options. The first one is a monthly charge. It's a lower monthly charge, but it still has that $10 per item bulky item charge on that. This bulky item would also apply to multifamily and commercial customers also. The second option has a higher monthly charge, but no charge for those bulky items. We did raise that charge just enough that would cover what we foresee for the waste collection, and that would cover the items that we would pick up throughout the year. Both the options do have a 96-gallon cart size option and rates for additional cans. Both options, there'll be a change in fees for appliances that are picked up that are Freon and non-Freon appliances. We would still like the bulky item pickups to be scheduled, either through the website or the phone, but as some of the feedback we got from the commissioners, our drivers will be able, through our software, to monitor the items, and we'd be able to click on there and schedule them for pickup as needed. When you do schedule those items for pickup, they would not need to be on your actual garbage day. Scheduling through that, you'd be able to choose which day you'd want to set it out or get it picked up, and we'd be able to build a route from that. Either of the options, there is no charge for branch pickup, and residents would still have the ability to schedule their pickup days with branches as well. One thing I didn't mention before, but this is something that we want to just make sure that it gets out there as well, is that we'd still have an annual spring cleanup week every year. All the changes wouldn't take that away. We'd still do that annual spring cleanup week. And some of the other things that we're still looking forward, at the next meeting that we'll bring forward too, we're going to a 4-day per week residential pickup schedule. And then we'd also like to start that pilot program for front-end load trucks in 2025. And that's for a little bit safer use of picking up the commercial and multifamily dumpsters. We just really wanted to get this out and to the public's hands, prior to the next meeting, so everybody had a chance to look at these rates. Rate option, I guess one, it would be residential rate for a 64 gallon would start in 2024 at $20.48 per month. And the 96 gallon cart, is raised up from the last one by $3 this time. That'll fully cover the waste that is in the difference between the 64 and 96 gallon. And another change with this is that the multifamily flat rate that we changed to did go up to 80% of the residential rate of the 64 gallon can. And if you look at now option 2, the really only difference is that would go up to 21.35 in 2024, and that flat rate would be 17.08. That again is 80% of that 64 gallon can number. One other item that we'd like to do and bring forward when we go for approval next in the next meeting is that we're kind of looking for approval of the 2024 rates, and with I guess a kind of approval of the 5-year rate schedule, but knowing that we'd come back and final approval would be through the budgeting process every year. So it would just be, next meeting would ask for the approval for 2024 rates with these other rates in 25, 26, and 27, 28 are all guidelines. And then we'd come back through that budgeting process so we know where we're at for the year and where we'd be at with revenues. And we can adjust that, depending on where we're at with those new rates. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions, Commissioners? Commissioner Anderson?
So I'm looking at these numbers here. I'm looking at the difference between the 96 and the 64 gallons. And it looks like, I know we're trying to look at just a 5-year period here, not necessarily going to approve 5 years, but looking at what you have here, I'm seeing a $3 difference for each of the 5 years between the 96 and the 64 gallon. And so I guess my question is, would we not increase that 96 gallon rate at the same percentage that we are the 64 gallon? So if you look at it as like a per gallon aspect, you're widening that gap between per gallon. You're going to push people more towards the 96 gallon. Is that the goal here? Or is that something we need to look at?
That might be something we need to look at down the road if it gets, too much of a gap. But right now we're looking at that $3 right now will cover that, I guess, the difference between how much you can put in a 96 and a 64 gallon over that year for disposal fees of the waste.
Okay. So I don't know if I'm all that clear, but if you look at the second cans, $9 for 96 gallon, and the $6 for the 64 gallon. Between looking at 25 to 2024, it's not a 3, it's a little more than a $3 difference. That's where I'm seeing a difference here, where that residential 96 gallon up there on the second line for $26.55, that's only $3 more than the 64. So that's something we'll just want to keep an eye on probably as we move forward within the 5 years, and just kind of, if we're going to raise the 64 gallon, unless we want to push people to the 96 gallon, we'll probably want to adjust that as well if we're having to adjust the 64 gallon.
So I did some quick math here while you were speaking. The $3 increase from 24, and if we would stay with a 15% increase for the 64 gallon, a 15% increase for a 96 gallon would be $3.52 versus just $3. That was the point you were trying to get.
Right now it's just like we're taking the 64 gallon plus $3, and so that percentage increase is lower on the 96 gallon than it is on the 64 gallon. So that's just, if that's how we want to do it, that's
Yeah,
fine. I just
that-
didn't know what the intent was, and so that's why I'm
Right.
asking the question.
Yeah, I guess that's, you kind of caught the, where the math is there. We just basically went $3 off of the 64. But yeah, if we just want to take that 2348, that would be in 2024, and take that by the 15%, we can do that as well.
Right.
That works too. I can change that and bring that back for the next one.
I think that would be, in my opinion, more accurate, and if we're going to look more longer term, not necessarily going to approve 5 years, but just looking more longer term and just kind of see what the impact potentially could be.
Correct.
Hopefully
Yeah,
not,
that'd be
but
no
could be.
problem. I can do that.
Okay.
For that next meeting, I'll bring that back like that.
Well, I think the important thing to remember is that what Mr. Anvik said earlier is that it's a proposal for a 5-year rate deal, but we're only approving
Right.
one.
Right.
Because we want to make sure that, with these changes that we're considering, that we're not asking more money from the taxpayers than what we need too. I mean, obviously, we've had a sanitation study, and Mr. Anvik and Mr. Jacobson have done to me, a great job on their analysis, as well as the engagement and involvement of Commissioner George. So this is, I think that the plan is well thought out, but the point being is that what's critically important is that we have this, this enterprise fund is funding itself. We're not asking for too much money as well from our taxpayers. So thank you, Commissioner George, for your work on this project as well. Anything else for Mr. Anvik? Again, this is an informational only. Commissioner George?
I guess I had a question more for the other commissioners, I guess. So since this is information only, when we met, we tried to take into account the comments from the previous meeting from commissioners and try to make adjustments for that. And I thought it was important to still have an option at this point, based on comments I'd heard from the commission and from the public. So I guess I'm just kind of wondering some feedback, I guess, what your thoughts are on the two different options, I guess, at this point.
I like option 2.
I like option 1.
I like option 2.
That's why we all got elected.
All right.
We're independent
Okay.
thinkers.
Cool. Great. I'm glad we brought the options forward then, since we're actually divided on that,
Yep.
so, okay.
All right?
With that, would you want me to just bring one forward, or should still bring the two? I guess
I would lean
I'm going to
towards,
defer to Commissioner George.
I would lean towards both. I like that people have different preferences, and so I think we bring them both back, and then we can vote, since,
With the consideration of Commissioner Anderson's points that he brought up.
yeah, we'll make that change for
Yeah,
that
yeah.
next.
And again, being Commissioner George holds that portfolio of sanitation, we'd want her engaged in everything and anything. Commissioner Anderson?
Yeah, and just my point with this, for the public's sake, it's not that I want to have higher rates in the future. It's that if we do come back to this, that we're as accurate as we can be. We're setting it up right, and we're not having to go back and say, oh, we made an error in one of the calculations and things like that. So I just want to make sure that we're being transparent, accountable here. So
Great point. Great point.
No problem.
Thanks.
Good with
Any additional questions for Mr. Advick? Thank you, sir. Moving on to item number 8 is an Improvement District 2261 discussion through 2024 mill and overlay, various neighborhoods. Mr. Hanson, our city engineer. This is a hearing regarding District number 2261 and approval of resolution of insufficient protest. Mr. Hanson, city engineer.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. Excuse me. At the November 20th, 2023 Commission meeting, the Commission approved an engineer's report and set forth what we're here to speak of tonight, which is a hearing of protest period that was set forth. It was advertised, and the assessment, or the improvement district, was sent out 1,350 letters to parcels within the improvement district. We received 31 letters of protest, and I'll say letters being emailed or written correspondence. Out of the 1,350 letters mailed out, 31 replied back in protest of the creation of the improvement district.
We did receive one additional email that was after the date that they were supposed to, but I would say that extra email that we got was also in opposition to the creation of the district. So I would, let me scroll down through here. There, wanted to just bring up a visual map that shows the different areas that represent the improvement district is the dashed lines. You can see on the first sheet here of these two developments, there was one parcel in each one of those developments that had written in opposition to the creation of the district. On the next map, we've got 3 different areas of improvement district to be created. And on this sheet, we had a total of 5 parcels that were writing in opposition to the creation of the district. And then on the last sheet here, there's 2 districts, additions that are part of the district. From the Wilds addition area, there was 1 parcel that had written in opposition, with the vast majority of the letters of opposition that we received from this edition, the Westport Beach edition. So, lastly, to put it as a visual, the way the century code reads, it goes based off of land area of the district. There was a total of 362.6 acres of parcels within the improvement district. The total number of parcels that were in opposition were the 31, which represented 7.04 acres, which would be less than 2% of the improvement district, wrote in protest to the creation of the district, and 98.06%. I'm not going to say were in favor of the project, but they were not opposed to it to the point where they were writing us a letter of opposition. So 355.56 acres of the 362.6 acres did not write in protest of the creation of the district. One other thing that I'd like to just remind the commission of is what is the work that is anticipated to be done with this project. It would be to go in and mill and overlay the streets within these areas. And in the process, if there are some localized failures, we would patch the streets in those portions. If there is some very pronounced curb settlement, we would replace some curb in those areas. And then also with any mill and overlay project, we are required through the ADA laws to make all of the pedestrian ramps up to ADA compliance within the district. So all of the ADA ramps in all of these districts would be reconstructed to, assuming that the ones that the vast majority are out of compliance, which we did a survey inventory on all of those. So it is the vast majority of them that would be reconstructed. And then there's also 2 regional streets that we would be doing the same thing on the mill and overlay. It would be proposed that the city, as it has been proposed, the city would pay 100% for all of the regional roadways, which would be 9th Street and 36th Avenue. And then also all of the ADA improvements that we would be doing in conjunction with this project are also proposed to be paid 100% by city funds and not assessed. The assessed portion would be only the mill and overlaid portions of the streets within those districts, and that would also include the curb and gutter to make the streets rideable again. So anyways, with that, that's the work that's being proposed tonight. We're here as a hearing to hear the number of protests, and that was less than 2%. So with that, I would entertain any questions.
Commissioners? Commissioner Olson?
More of a, I guess it would be a question. You say that the ADA ramps and all that are out of compliance, and these are relatively new developments. Why are they out of compliance so soon? Was there changes in the laws, or why are they not built right the first time, or why are they need to be replaced?
I can't answer as far as how they were constructed originally, but what I can say is that they were all inventoried. And we live in an area where there's a lot of frost heave, there's a lot of swellable soils, so a lot of the sidewalks that you have, They're generally constructed with a design standard of less than 2% cross grade, which is ADA compliant. If it reaches 2.05 percent cross grade because maybe it's heaved, maybe something has happened like that, that makes it out of compliance. And then I'm not saying some of them weren't maybe constructed wrong, but what I can say is as part of the ADA transition plan that we had presented back earlier, I believe this year, we introduced to the commission that there is, I believe, over around 3,000 of these ped ramps throughout town that need to be reconstructed. So it's pretty much, the vast majority of our ped ramps in town.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Mr. George?
I might have asked this before, but just to clarify, can we do the ADA portion without the mill and overlay portion?
You can go and do, say we just wanted to do an ADA project, we could go in there and just reconstruct all the ped ramps. The one thing is that when you're redoing the ADA ramps, typically you'll have to redo the curb and gutter that runs along where it meets up with the street. And when anytime you're re-pouring that curb and gutter, you need to go out into the street a foot or two, and that would be a patch. But you definitely can do an ADA project without a mill and overlay. You just cannot do a mill and overlay project without the ADA improvements.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Anderson?
In here, there's reference to some of the discussion we had back in November and talking about a new 5-year CIP being brought forward this year here in 2024. Do you have an anticipated timeline on when we might see that and start discussing percentages and things for various projects and what we might look at for being assessed?
Yeah. Right now, we do have a consultant that is updating the core area study that had been done a number of years ago to bring it up to today's dollars, as well as for them to give us the top 8 to 10 projects that would be listed in order. We've been working with them quite extensively on putting a triage of projects on that. They are basically at about the 95%. They're almost done with that study. What they're waiting on is earlier, towards the end of last year, we actually said that we were going to take a look at the Meadow Ridge neighborhood, and so we're in the process of making that analysis. We originally cored some holes in the Meadow Ridge neighborhood, and we found a wide variety of asphalt sections. There were some asphalt sections that were 22 inches of asphalt on little amount of base. There were other asphalt sections, I believe, that were like 4 inches of asphalt on a foot of base. So it was all over the board. Too much variance to really make a condition. So there is another technology that we just undertook to help analyze the roadways in that neighborhood. That's a ground penetrating radar where basically they can drive over it and they can use a resonance radar to tell us exactly what's going on in a more continuous area to get better answers for that. So long answer to a short question. Once we have the information from that, we do know that there's a little bit of sanitary work that needs to happen in that neighborhood. If you just took a look at that piece of the Meadow Ridge neighborhood, that would actually be a very highly ranked project on their upcoming report. So we wanted to wait for that to come in. And then once we know here's our list of projects, our top 10, and then other ones that have been put some more thought into it. Once we get that, then we're really going to put the coals to the fire on getting the information for that. What I can say is we have already began as a staff creating the list of projects that we need. I've reached out to Public Works, Economic Development, and Planning to get all of their input. I'm hoping to meet with them towards the end of this month to see what they would like to have added to the CIP. So I'm hoping that by the end of February, March timeframe, we can start having some discussions. The goal for the 2024 CIP would be June at the latest for it to be finalized. So obviously prior to that, we would definitely have some discussions. And in that analysis for the 2024 CIP, we've had a few discussions on this, especially in our workshop that we did on the 3 projects for the CIP, taking a look at different percentages of assessments that we would want to move forward with as a policy. I know Mayor Dardis has said several times, not in favor of this project being assessed at 80% on the local roadways. Tonight, we're only talking about protestation of creating the district. This does not set the assessments in stone. They can be changed based off of that analysis at a future date.
Thank you.
To Commissioner Anderson's point, it's a bit uncomfortable for us to be looking at some of these projects for 2024 if we don't know your updated CIP and the updated dollars that we apply to each of those line items of those projects. So sooner is better than later, obviously. The other thing is that I do believe that with the inflation factors that we have, particularly even as you have noted in this particular one, where the original estimate in February was $7,900,000, it's now at $8,390,000, which is obviously $490,000 increase. And for us to continue to be at an 80-20 split with the taxpayers doing 80%, those inflation dollars are really, really kind of, punish us in 2024. So, and obviously we're not making a firm commitment as to what that split is now this evening, which I think is a good thing. We can look at that, look at additional fundings, see where our prairie dog monies come in, because we've committed those dollars to be for existing infrastructure, no new green space developments. So that's important to remember, that on a biennium, if all the buckets filled, it's a little over $12 million. So can you remind me what the line item is for revenues for sales tax that's available to be used in the CIP for 2024? I don't have that at the top of my head.
Right now, our projection, based off of my last conversation with our former infrastructure management person, was that we plan for about $11 million of capital improvement sales tax to be brought in.
And in the last 2 years, one year we spent $9 million, the other year we spent just under $16 million. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct. Yep.
All right, very good. All right. Any other questions, commissioners? Again, this is a hearing, so we do call on those if they live in those areas. I have one more question. So you had 3 maps of 3 different neighborhoods up there. Can you provide me with the map that's with the most protests in it?
That would be this one right here.
Yeah, I have it in front of me on my screen here, but my point is can we remove that one out of the 3 or 4? Or, if this neighborhood, in their assessment of their streets, would that be a consideration?
Just a comment.
Please.
If we keep
Commissioner
kicking it down the can, we're gonna end up with neighborhoods like we have in Meadow Ridge, where it gets too costly to do a simple mill and overlay. And if we keep waiting and waiting and waiting and look for this and look for that, inflation doesn't stop.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson.
So that's one of my concerns. So I live in the core area. If we were to do a reconstruct on my street, we're looking 50, 60, maybe more $1,000 because I'm on a corner. I guess the question that I have is, does a mill and overlay help protect the infrastructure below grade, like the sewer and the water and all that, like the issues that we're seeing here in the core area? Or is it only focused more on the road and it doesn't really have much of an impact?
This is more of a surface improvement. For the most part, everything south of the interstate has grown over the last 20 years, 23, and there wasn't much south of the interstate in 2000. Since then, it's been developed. Most everything that's been put in there, if not everything, has been installed with new PVC that has an 80 to 100 year span. So we're not really talking about saving the infrastructure with this. Basically, this is a life cycle of the roadway cost analysis. Mill and overlays are part of general maintenance that you do. My thoughts is, and industry standards is that you have a roadway. When we construct our roadways originally, they're constructed with those utilities underneath it. Over time, especially after the first improvement project where you construct the utilities, you'll have some trench settlement that happens. And we do have design standards that we test for, that the contractor is held accountable for, but you can never, unless we were to basically fill all the trenches up with a flowable concrete fill, there's gonna be some settlement, especially as I mentioned, we live in an area of swellable soils. When the moisture comes in and out, things happen. So that's where you see some of these newer neighborhoods have some pretty rolling streets. You've got manholes that are sticking up out of the street because there's settlement that occurred around them. So the first step of a road cycle would be to construct the street. You're going to have some of those things happen. You'll typically have some seal coats, things like that. At about the 15-year mark is where you come in and you do a mill and overlay. That basically you put some, you fill in some of the low areas, the rutted areas, and you fix some areas that you can't just fill in. You put the mill and overlay in. That's adding a new, and now you're taking out the 2 inches because you're milling it, but adding the 2 inches back on top. That's giving the roadway a new surface to deteriorate over the next 15 years. Without that, there's, it was in the engineer's report, I believe that I presented in November, and also in our workshop where it showed industry studies have shown without the mill and overlay, you can, in the chart actually showed if you put $1 into it right now, you're saving $5 to $6 later. Now it's not $1 or $5, it's just a percentage to take into account, but by not doing this, there would be potential that your time to reconstruct these roadways is going to move forward a decade or two. It could be possible that without fixing these, they're just going to continue to deteriorate, and we'd be looking at reconstructs here in another 15 to 20 years. With this overlay, you'd be able to get another 15 years out of it before you'd maybe look at potentially doing another one to extend it and hopefully get 45 to 50 years out of your roadway. Not doing this and let it just continuing to deteriorate without proper maintenance such as this, you're looking at having reconstructs 15, 20 years earlier than the normal life cycle you'd like to get out of your roadways. And it's tough, I understand it. If you live on the street and you're driving down it and you don't see alligator cracking, the street looks like it's holding up. It is still deteriorating.
Commissioner George.
Just a quick comment as far as my opinion on where we're at. So when we talk about use of prairie dog funds, we talk about use of capital improvement funds. I feel like those resources should be more directed towards core areas, Meadow Ridge and whatnot, as well as maybe the ADA compliant portion of this project. I hear from people in the core neighborhoods about wanting their roads fixed. I do not hear that from people in these neighborhoods. And in fact, the people in these neighborhoods have come to speak in the past and have said things like, let's put a pause on this. I don't think they necessarily mean kick the can down the road forever, but they're already special assessed really high. They just want to pause and, maybe not right now, maybe in a few years, and not forever, but just putting a pause on the whole special assessment of these neighborhoods. So, if we do have those other resources, maybe, my opinion, bring it back with the ADA portion, bring it back in a few years to do the mill and overlay, and let's focus on those core areas now. That's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mayor Dardis?
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. I just want to make, if I can, please, make a couple comments. One, out of 1,350, there are 31 citizens. I get what they're saying, but let me give an analogy that hopefully it won't sound silly, but everybody can understand. Okay, when you're driving your car and your brakes, when you start to hear them squeak, what do? You get new brake pads. If you let that squeak go on, now all of a sudden you got to change your order or get it, grind it down. That's what we're talking about here. This is simple maintenance as if it would be if you had a vehicle. If we don't do this now, Commissioner Olson is right. It will cost these citizens a lot more down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Anyone else? Any other questions, comments?
I just want to agree with
Please.
Commissioner Simmons that, I'll use another analogy. It's like shingles on your roof. You don't take care of it, next thing you know, you got to replace the whole roof, the plywood, the rafters, and all that. So at what point do you say it's, do I fix it? And tonight, all we're doing is basically approving a resolution that there was insufficient protests to stop the project. We're not, what we vote on tonight does not approve the project entirely. So that's all the meeting, what this item is really for.
Thank you. That's a good point. The point I want to make is that we have not determined what the percentage is of the participation in the city versus the taxpayers on these projects.
Right.
And I will say without reservation that if we come back in where this is 8 million, tell me again,
8.3.
$8.3 million, and we expect the taxpayers to pay for 80% of that dollar amount, I cannot support that. So to go through the process to actually get our bids, that's one thing, and I think that we need to proceed with that. That's good business. But at the same time, whether it's finance or our city administrator, or Mr. Hanson being our city engineer, we have to look at different avenues as to how we're going to approach this. Because the inflation dollars aren't only just affecting the city. They're dramatically affecting the taxpayers, and we have to keep that in mind. So with that, Commissioners, what's your pleasure on this project?
We still need,
Make a motion to approve.
point of order, we still need to have a
Please.
hearing.
Oh, excuse me, thank you, Commissioner Anderson. We do have a hearing. Again, when we have a hearing comments on this, it must be to this specific item only, nothing else you might be experiencing in the city of West Fargo in your neighborhoods. It is on this overlay project, correct?
Correct, this is specifically for the project.
So, if by a show of hands, does anybody like to speak to this evening? Okay. The lady in the front, we're going to start with you because you're in the front. So I'd ask respectfully that you clearly state your name and address in case you're asking a question that staff needs to get back to you. We want to be sure that we can get back a hold of you. So please come to the lectern.
Thank you, President, Commissioners. Karen Anderson.
Move it down a little bit so we can hear you a little. There you go. There you go.
Karen Anderson, 915 46th Avenue West, Westport Beach. I'm glad I came tonight because I really didn't understand the project. It looked humongous. And I was thinking, what's going on here? I actually have paid off all my specials, but I'm retired. And I have to start putting money into a house built in 2006. A lot of people are not at the point where they can take any more specials. And I really like that I learned that it doesn't have to be 80-20. And I agree with you, and I appreciate you saying that. I think I understand the need for it. I don't understand, I'm thinking there are other funding sources. I don't know what took place with the materials and everything to make it degrade. I don't know if those contractors have any culpability. I don't know if there's anything we can do with the people that will be the contractors. Is there something that they're doing to the roads? You know, there's construction going on all the time, and I see giant semis going down my road. 9th Avenue is huge. So I'm just saying, give us a break as taxpayers. We need it. It's tough times. I want to remain in my home. I love my home. I love where I live, but 80-20. So that's basically what I pass along for everybody. We understand that specials are there. It's not something we're used to if we come from other places in the country. It's a hardship. It is. We're all pushed to the brink right now. It's, the economy is what the economy is, but people work for a living, and they're working very hard, and they didn't come tonight because they're busy. They are exhausted. Everybody is working 2 people out of every house. They don't have time to come here. They have kids and activities. Don't take the protest as the feelings. They're up to here. And that's what I wanted to communicate for those that couldn't come forward tonight and speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. There's that lady right there. Again, please state your name and address, so if you have any questions, we can get back to you.
Certainly. My name is Becky Disher. I live at 45.
Excuse me, Fisher?
Disher with
Disher.
a D like
Thank you.
Delta. And I live at 4523 Sunrise Drive in West Fargo. We're part of the protest section, actually, from the map. A couple things that I wanted to mention. I echo a lot of what the previous person had said about there's a lot of special assessments in that area already, and it is a burden. In our area, at least, the roads, they're not bad. The sidewalks are in good shape. I've got kids that drive, I've got kids that play outside on those streets and in those roads and on the sidewalks, and I would be more interested in maybe the ADA portion of that rather than the whole project and the 80-20 aspect of it. I'm also curious, the 31 protests strikes me curious because if you go into our Facebook page, there's a lot more than 31 people commenting that they sent in and protested this, but no one got any kind of confirmation that our protests were received. So I wonder, I guess I'm asking if there's any way that we can know that they were actually received.
Mr. Hanson?
In the letter that was sent out, it provided an email address to send it in to the auditor. Madam Secretary checks that email, and she forwards me every email that comes in. Also, any written correspondence that was sent in also has landed on my desk. I scan that, I put it to the file. So I do have a file, and actually was emailed I emailed out, here was all of the letters so that you'd have a chance to read them. And they're available from anybody that would like to see them to see that theirs was received. But what I can say is they were all, every email that hit the auditor's inbox was forwarded to me. I personally saved it to the file and provided it, so I believe it's comprehensive. I don't know how it would have slipped through the cracks. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I can say that everyone that we know about was counted.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hanson. Mrs. Hagemeister, would you please check on that to see whether or not there's a possibility that some of these were delayed because of the server or whatever? Could we follow through with IT on to make sure that, to this lady's point, if anything got delayed or if they went to some other type of email address? We can check that for you.
And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl Severson, and along with my husband, John, I reside at 4536 10th Street West, also in the Westport Beach development. My first question is, I'm curious to find out why the lifespan of these streets in our development is only 15 to 20 years.
Mr. Hanson?
Thank you, Commissioner President Ardis. Also, going back to her question as far as is there culpability from the original contractors that constructed the roadway for us to having to be coming in here and doing this project within the next 15 years. For her question as well as your question, what we're experiencing is expected. There wasn't negligence by the contractor. that constructed the roadways. The lifespan we're hoping for the roadway will be 45 to 50 years with proper maintenance such as the mill and overlays. Without the mill and overlays, our lifespan of our roadway is probably going to be likely in the neighborhood of 30, 35 years before it needs to be reconstructed. So this mill and overlay needs to be looked at as maintenance, not a failure of the roadway. And the purpose for this is to extend the life cycle of the roadway. But asphalt streets deteriorate. It's something that happens with every asphalt street. Fargo just did a number of mill and overlays all across town. This is a fairly standard practice at the 15-year mark for asphalt roadways.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Okay, then taking that into consideration, if this is an expected maintenance after 15 to 20 years, why was this not budgeted for year after year after year and money set aside for this mill and overlay when these developments were established versus all of a sudden coming along and saying we need $8.3 million from our homeowners, or 80% of $8.3 million from our homeowners to do this maintenance. My roof has a 30-year lifespan on it, and I knew that going into purchasing my home. And the remainder after we purchased our home was 20 years, so we are setting aside money each year to replace that roof. And other appliances and HVAC systems, we know that they have a certain lifespan, and we are setting aside money each year that we know that end of life is coming for those appliances and HVAC and the roof, that we have to replace them. Why was the city not doing the same for us and protecting us as homeowners? Is it easier for you just to say, oh, you're responsible for 80% of this cost? With inflation and the rising energy costs, it's forced us as homeowners to rethink some of our fluff projects that we want to do on our home as far as upgrades are concerned as well. And to make solid advance plans for the needed replacement of the expensive items. And we just expect the city to do the same that we are forced to do as homeowners. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. I'll comment on that just because I know for a fact. North Dakota statute says that we can't charge a homeowner ahead of time to do projects like that, because I tried to do that quite a few years ago. So that's why.
Did you hear what he said? Yeah. Okay, very good. Anyone else that would like to speak to this issue? Sir, please come up.
My name's Jason Opp. I'm at 4430 Newport Lane in the Westport Beach development. I keep hearing conversation about the guidelines say every 15 years this should be done. Mr. Simmons used an analogy about his car brakes, that if they start squeaking, the more he uses them, the quicker he's got to replace them, the more damage it can cause. You look at Westport Beach, we're not a destination community. We don't have shopping, there's no restaurants. It's off to the side, no main roads through besides 9th. My analogy is, if I only drive my car on Sundays to church, my brakes are gonna last a lot longer than Mr. Simmons. So based on the guidelines, what work has been done to determine the actual level of deterioration on the roads?
Mr. Hanson.
There have been pavement indexes that were done from driving around, and analyzing the roadways. So that everything has been looked at, but it's hard to, there's nothing that looks at it and you put a meter on it and it gives you a number. You know, it's all based off of visual observations and industry standards as far as pavement life expectancy. Now, say we do this now, the settlement has obviously occurred in these roadways. When we come in and we do this, we make the roadways straight, level, passable. We don't expect further settlement to happen. It would only be true deterioration of the asphalt that would cause us to need to do this again the next time. And possibly where we normally would do that in 15 years, maybe that is 20, 25 years out before we have to do the next one. And those will be analyzed at that time as well. I hope this answers the question, but
Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
absolutely.
Is there any additional comments for this hearing from the public? Anyone else? Please, ma'am.
Again, I'm Becky Disher. I think that what was maybe being said, or how I would think of it too, is that we're already paying taxes. So where's the tax money that we've already paid that should be going into these projects? It's not charging the homeowners ahead of time for projects, it's that we're paying our taxes. We're paying gas tax, we're paying property tax, we're paying sales tax, we're paying all these taxes already that should go into these infrastructures. So that, it's not about charging us ahead of time, it's about using the money we've already paid to maintain. Thank you.
If I could
Mr.
respond to that, we have accumulated capital improvement sales tax dollars in preparation for projects like this. So the city has been accumulating money for capital improvement projects. As Mr. Simmons stated, we can't, if we were to start creating funds for the eventual reconstruct of the entire city, that number would be astronomical. And so the purpose of the capital improvement sales tax fund is to accumulate funds to put towards this. The other thing that I would mention is that the proposed assessment rate isn't 80% of the $8.39 million because the ADA ramps are 1.5 million of that. The regional streets are another, I believe, $400,000 of that. If you actually take a look at what the city is planning to pay for the regional roadways, the ADA ramps, and currently the proposed 20%, I believe that the amount of assessments for this project, holistically speaking, would be just under 65% and not 80% when you're looking at the project as a whole. That being said, right now what's proposed is just the local improvements of the mill and overlay and the curb and gutter out front of their place. That's what is being proposed at the 80%. The city is picking up roughly about 35% of the project, assessing about 65% of the project as it's being proposed. So.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. In that argument with myself, I did the calculations, and I think it's 67%. You referenced and rounded to 65, but I think it's 67% that we're asking the taxpayers to pay on this particular project if you use the big numbers. To all the comments that have made about taxes and the property taxes that the city gets and the like, is, when one looks at their tax statement, they're often they obviously look at the bottom number, but there are other jurisdictions that also benefit from, the property taxes that you good folks pay. And you'll note that we're one of the smaller players of the revenues that we do get. So, and we always talk about how rapidly West Fargo grew, and keeping that in mind, that I believe that somewhere around in the high 20s, I think, is the percentage that we actually get of the taxes that you folks pay, or we all pay. So that is an interesting dilemma, and how we do it. And of course, there's been years where we've not been able to do the projects that we wanted to do. And now that inflation is upon us in the manner that it is, it even makes it more and more difficult. So we're going to have to be as good students as we possibly can in determining how we're going to spend those dollars and most effectively to stand beside our citizens and make sure that when we do these projects, it's affordable. And that's going to be tough work on all of us as commissioners. There's no question about that. Right now, we're working with North Dakota, Bank of North Dakota, the North Dakota League of Cities. We're trying to make sure that they continue to have some of these low-interest loans, 2%, revolving fund loans, and those types of things. So rest assured, we're looking at all kinds of different avenues that we can help the taxpayers and help our city. So again, is there anyone else that would like to speak at this hearing? All right, the hearing is closed. Commissioners, we're on Improvement District 2261-2024 mill and overlay for various neighborhoods. Again, it's to approve the resolution of insufficient protests. We're just acknowledging that we went out to the public and got those. There is no determination as to the cost ratio with the taxpayers versus the city at this time.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Mayor,
Commissioner Simmons.
thank you. Could I just make one quick comment, please?
Is there a second, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was a motion. I'll make a second.
Thank you. I have a second by Commissioner Simmons. Is there any discussion? I call on Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I just want to make the comment that, I understand what those folks are saying, I really do, but I live in an older part of town. My home is in 1967, and about 15 years ago, we were offered this to do a mill and overlay, and it got voted down. And I can tell you all today, I wish the heck we would have done it, because right now it's going to cost us thousands and thousands of dollars to do a reconstruction. So I just wanted to put that out there for him. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I have a motion and a second to approve District Number 2261-2024 mill and overlay. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner George, excuse me.
Just comment. I do, once again, think it's very important as an elected official to listen to the public and listen to their opinion and listen to what they have to say. And, I do believe that the opinion of people not wanting to do this does extend far greater than the people that took the time to write emails. And this is their neighborhoods, and I think we need to listen to them as far as what they want. And I understand the engineering of what Mr. Hansen's saying. I appreciate him bringing this forward. But what some of the other people are saying, this is residential. They're not commercial. It's not that busy. It might be fine to push it back beyond 15 years if it's not in poor condition. It's just one of those recommended maintenance procedures that might be just fine to push it back and save these people money and put a pause on that special assessment. That's something else. I believe the special assessment, as we've talked about, it's a problem, how we do it, and this commission has an opportunity to change that. And with this neighborhood, these neighborhoods, we're proving we're not changing that, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Commissioner Anderson, I didn't hear your vote. Did you vote aye? Okay, thank you. Opposed?
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Motion fails on a
Sorry,
3 to
Mayor,
2
could you
vote.
repeat that?
Commissioner?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Did the first one get denied? You
The
asked
vote,
for another motion?
the vote was 3 to 2, it failed.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you.
Item number 9 is the lighting standard improvements from high-pressure sodium to LED. Mr. Dan Hanson, City Engineer, create a Project 9040, approve an engineer's report, approve a task order 2023-01-1 for basic services, and direct the engineer to prepare plans and specifications. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Commissioner, President Ardis, and Commissioners. In front of us is an opportunity to replace a lot of the older high-pressure sodium street lights with new, more efficient LED lighting. We did receive a grant for a carbon reduction program that was to be used for this, which was going to provide $300,000 towards this work. That's an 80% match. We have, excuse me, we had a consultant that did a photometric analysis of a number of major corridors throughout town, not necessarily just off the side residential neighborhoods, more of the main corridors. And when they came back with that, they came up with approximately 20 different corridors that we had them analyze for us to look at replacing the standards. We have a limited amount of funds, so we're looking at replacing some of them, not all of them. We have a project in front of you that we would have that grant of $300,000 for. We estimate the cost of the overall project to be $625,000. We do pay on a kilowatt hour for our electricity. Generally speaking, an LED light is about a third of the energy being used. So there would be a return on investment and cost savings over time for this. And so we'd be looking to create the project, approve the engineer's report, and also to approve a task order for a consultant to put together the plans and specifications. Because due to the funding source, this is a project that has to be designed, bid out, awarded, and done through normal construction procedures. And with that, I would entertain any questions.
Questions for Mr. Hanson? Any questions? What's your pleasure, Commissioners?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the lighting standard improvements of high-pressure sodium to LEDs, create a project 9040 to approve the engineer's report and approve a task order. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you.
Item number 10 is also his, Mr. Hanson's, and it's a 2024 concrete pavement repair, various locations. Create project number 2282, and approve the engineer's report and direct engineering to prepare plans and specifications. Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. As stated in the cover sheet, this project seeks to improve pavement conditions and preserve the integrity of the city's collector and arterial roadway network. Basically, every year we go out and we identify concrete roadways that are cracking and in need of repair. And we've done this a number of years in a row in 2020, 21, 22, and 23. This is something that we do on an annual basis. Normally, we've had bigger projects. This year, we didn't find as many to correct, so it's a smaller project than what we've done in the past. But we would be looking to basically go out there and repair cracked panels in our concrete roadways as our annual maintenance project. And there would be no assessments anticipated with this project.
And the estimate is $565,000, is that correct?
Correct. This was a project that was designed in-house and will be administered construction with our staff.
Any questions for Mr. Hanson, Commissioners?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. It's been moved and is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner George. It's moved and seconded that 2024 concrete pavement repair, various locations, project number 2282 be approved. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 11 is the first reading of the proposed gas franchise ordinance 1235. We'll call on our Assistant City Attorney. Sarah?
Thank you, Commission President, Commissioners. The revisions to this ordinance are twofold. One is increasing the franchise fee from 2% to 4%, which is shown in Schedule A attached to the ordinance. The other change is merely correcting a typo. Throughout the ordinance, it referred to electricity where it should have been gas.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Move to approve?
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please? Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the first reading of the proposed gas franchise ordinance 1235. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I neglected at the beginning of the meeting to tell you that our city administrator was not present this evening because he's on vacation. I have only several pieces of correspondence that I received, and I've put them in Mr. Scott's box to bring them forward, so I don't have them with me, and so I don't have any correspondence. Commissioners, you have anything? Okay. Are there any non-agenda items that we'd like to bring forward this evening by our Chief of Police? Chief Nielsen.
Thank you. Good evening, Commission President Dardis, fellow commissioners. After my appointment to the Chief of Police here a few months ago, my spot as the Assistant Chief was opened up, and it remained opened up until recently. We decided that it would be at this time to open it up, the spot, and after careful consideration, it's my pleasure to announce that the next Assistant Chief is here in the room, and that is Jason Anderson. Jason Anderson was hired by the West Fargo Police Department in 2018. He's originally from Barnesville, Minnesota. He has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Since working at the police department, he has helped establish the Defensive Tactics Unit. He served as the first bike patrol officer. He was the first school resource officer, and he served as a bomb tech for 11 years. Anderson has served in many leadership roles throughout the department, to include a patrol sergeant, administrative sergeant, field training supervisor, patrol lieutenant, administrative lieutenant, and a patrol commander. Anderson was selected based on his experience, commitment to the department, and outstanding service to our community. His dedication, leadership, and experience make him an outstanding candidate to serve the West Fargo Police Department, the community, as the next Assistant Chief of Police. And at this time, we will be presenting a ceremonial event at one of the next commission meetings in the future. But I'd like to advise you and everybody else that Jason Anderson is the next Assistant Chief of Police. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Chief. Assistant Chief, could you stand up and give a wave to everybody? Assistant Chief Anderson. Congratulations. Commissioner Olson, you have a non-agenda item.
Yep, I got a couple here. Just one thing for us as commissioners to consider when we postpone a meeting, it could affect the timing of paying bills. So we delayed this by a week, so that we could have delays in there. So it's something just to think about when we do postpone a meeting. It could affect when the bills get paid, and if we may have to pay a penalty because we're late, because we didn't approve it on time. So it's something just to consider. We could have held this meeting on the Tuesday versus a week later, and it could affect that. Just something to think about in the future. The other thing is, I've been working with Chief Nielsen on updating some ordinances for signage on semi-trailers throughout the city. And before I asked our city attorney to work on it, I wanted to get the consensus of the commission if we should go ahead and look at that, because of how long they can have a semi-trailer used as a sign. Is basically 45 days, and they're out of compliance. So we need, I feel, and the chief feels, we need to put a little more teeth into the ordinance to curb that usage.
So we're not talking about construction trailers
No.
with their identification on them. It's when they use it for a different means.
For different means.
Okay.
Yep. So before we
Fine.
pursued that avenue, I wanted to get the consensus of the commission.
If it's something important to you, I don't see anything wrong with
Okay.
it.
I'm fine with it.
So we'll start on that then, chief. And just one more comment, if I may.
Please.
About the delaying the maintenance of the projects like we just talked about in the mill and overlay. Just something for us to consider too. Because if we delay it, let's say 5 years, our construction costs 5 years from now could be 10% higher or so based on normal inflation. So if we think we're saving taxpayers money now by delaying it for 5 or 10 years, we may end up costing them even more in the long run, even if we do have a different split than 80-20. Even if it's 70-30, we could still be costing them more or equal to or more money because of customary inflation costs. So something just to think about too, of if we're just going to move it down and not going to do it now, it may end up costing them even more in the long run due to the delay. So something to think about. That's all I had.
Thank you. Anyone else have any non-agenda items? Commissioners? Any of the department heads? Please, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Commissioner, President and Commissioners. With respect to the mill and overlay project, tonight's vote dissolved the district. The district is no longer, we're not moving forward with this project and special assessing it. Wondering if there is any direction as far as, I still believe the project has merit on itself as far as the need for it. Now, whether it's this summer, maybe next summer, things like that, would the commission like me to bring this back as a project that does not have assessments attached to it to move forward with as well? Or is the thought process right now, don't do anything with this, bring it back in a number of years? Or what would, I don't know if I should just let this fade away, or if this is something you would like me to bring back, just take the assessments out of the equation.
Commissioner Anderson.
I guess my opinion would be that it's more of a, I'd like to see the CIP and see how it all works within that and kind of approach it from that viewpoint and get kind of the more holistic picture of everything we have going on.
And it could also be brought back in future years with just
Yes.
a different assessed percentage as well, too.
Absolutely agree with that, please.
I'm personally still interested in the ADA portion of because you said that could be done separately from the rest of the mill and overlay. Is the ADA a compliance portion, like you were talking about, the ADA portion of that project?
I could bring back just a project that does not have special assessments involved, where we're just doing the ped ramps with the,
I'd have an interest in that.
Was this
Mr. Olson.
on our previous CIP? Was this project part of our previous CIP?
we have had a mill and overlay of various neighborhoods in the CIPs, both the 2020 and the 2022. I believe for sure the 22. I believe the 2020 also had this project in it as well, so it was planned for. And I believe Commissioner Simmons just asked for a moment.
I believe we have to have some serious conversations with regard to, I'm going to reference a neighbor that we have. They've been at it 30%. But they can't keep up with that. So they're now considering different things and transferring of fees and all of those types of things, which I think is disingenuous when you're dealing with the taxpayers. So, Mr. Hanson, as our city engineer and as our professional, if you deem necessary to bring back parts of this or whatever, then we would have to review that on its own merits. And, to Commissioner George's point, she's 100% in favor of the ADA compliance improvements that we have to make. So, take that for what that's worth. There's a commissioner there that's passionate about that. So the key thing is, and I see that our finance director's in the crowd, and of course, we have to include Mr. Scott in these discussions as well, is the finances of this, as to how we can better use the resources that we have to make these things more affordable, more palatable. They're never going to be affordable in the people's minds. It's just a fact of life. But make it more palatable that we're sharing in that expense. due to the hard-earned tax dollars that we do collect from them. But again, I would remind the people to please look at your tax statements and look at the percentage the city gets, and be a little bit forgiving towards us.
Thank you.
Anything else? So, yes, Mr. Hanson, you're our professional. You have to help guide us with that, and we'll have opinions and thoughts on that. That's why we all got elected. So don't take that personally.
No, I never do.
This is an issue that, you know, the neighborhoods were passionate about their plea with taking a pause, and the results were as such, so.
Perfect. Thank you
sir.
so much. I appreciate it.
Anyone else have any non-agenda items from the staff that would like to bring up? Commissioner Simmons, anything?
Yes, thank you. I just want to remind everybody that whatever we do in this neighborhood, we have to do in every neighborhood. So if it comes forward without any assessments, we're setting a precedent. That's all, you know, that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Simmons,
Move to adjourn.
Commissioner Olson,
Second.
we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.